Tonight on Bridge City News, the federal Conservatives demand that the Prime Minister testify before the House of Commons Finance Committee regarding the We Charity scandal. Why we need more support services for those living on the street and battling addictions. And why one woman is advocating for conversion therapy and wants her voice heard.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Good evening, I'm Loris Alexander. Thank you for joining us. Opposition Conservatives are demanding that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau testify before the House of Commons Finance Committee as it prepares to study how much the government spent in awarding a now cancelled contract to the We Charity. The Liberal government is under fire for its decision to award a $19.5 million sole source contract to We Charity, a partnership that would have seen the organization administer more than $900 million for student work this summer under the Canada Student Service Grant. The Conservatives and NDP have also asked Canada's ethics watchdog to investigate Finance Minister Bill Morneau after his connections to the organization also came to light. For a significant number of homeless people with mental or physical impairments, often coupled with drug and/or alcohol abuse, long-term homelessness can only be ended with intensive support services. We spoke with two individuals on both sides of the spectrum.
We really face a lot of judgment. We face a lot of racism. You know, there's a lot of, just because we walk in and out of the street, we don't pick and choose to be on the street. You know, there's things that brought us to this situation. I'm going to get tired of this life. And I'm tired of this life because there's way more to life than just wasting another day on getting high and getting drunk.
It is very important to not only hear the individuals on the street share their story and to get that firsthand knowledge about some of the barriers and the challenges that are facing, but it's also important that there's accountability for frontline organizations, especially with respect to individuals who are being denied services that they're 100% eligible for, or we've been trying to connect with this person and we can't, or they're not following up. Well, there's a reason why they're not following up, and that could be anywhere from addiction to mental health, also instability of housing. They don't have housing. They don't have transportation to appointments. They don't, for the most part, carry calendars or cell phones that can remind them of appointments. So we need to start looking at the gaps in frontline services, especially for individuals that are facing extreme vulnerability and addictions and mental health challenges, because as someone who worked on the front line, one of the core essences to my role was going to individuals, not expecting them to come to me.
Two city councillors have requested to schedule public hearing on the proposed bylaw to ban the controversial practice of conversion therapy in Lethbridge. Councillors Blaine Hagan and Joe Morrow have put forward a motion for Monday's council meeting to delay the second and third readings of the city's conversion therapy bylaw. One community member says people should read the bylaw and voice their opinion to city council, regardless of where they stand on the topic.
Me, as a member, a marginalized member of the LGBTQ community, I would not be allowed to get the care that I want, the counseling that I need to help me meet my goals, to help me live out my faith, to help me in my relationships and my marriage. Because I was addicted to pornography, I was a member of a support group. We were all women and we helped each other. We had compulsive sexual behaviors. We were addicted to pornography. We had thoughts of cheating, and we didn't want to live that way. And so we went to a support group together to meet together and to encourage each other. But because of the language, the overly broad and subjective language of this bylaw, those support groups would be illegal. And if there is no public hearing, if we are not allowed to tell our stories, people like me, we're being told by Lethbridge City councillors that we should not have a public hearing or have public engagement because it will re-traumatize victims who have gone through conversion therapy. Well, I am somebody who went through conversion therapy, the good kind, the life-giving, healing kind that I should have the right to access. And I challenge every single person in Lethbridge, please, read the bylaw, make your voice heard, and tell our city council that just because I disagree with you doesn't mean that I don't get to share my story.
On June 25th, Alberta Health Minister Tyler Shandro announced expanded testing capacity at 20 pharmacies in the province. The move was an effort to make it even easier for Albertans to be tested.
I'm pleased to announce that people with no symptoms will soon be able to get tested in community pharmacies, making it easier for Albertans to access testing so we can continue to slow the spread of COVID-19 throughout our province. In the coming days, a number of community pharmacies with the skills and capacity will offer testing to Albertans without symptoms and no known exposure to COVID-19. This is in addition to the robust COVID-19 testing that's already offered province-wide by Alberta Health Services. Now, this is a step that just makes sense. Pharmacists are highly trained health professionals, and pharmacies support the healthcare of residents in their communities every day.
We spoke to one pharmacy in Lethbridge selected for the pilot project.
Alberta Health wanted to roll out asymptomatic testing to the pharmacies because community pharmacies is a very accessible resource, and also we would certainly help to increase the goal to increase the per day testing of the asymptomatic patients too, and it will also reduce the load from the AHS screening centers because they have more stringent duties to do, like checking out the prevalence as well as taking care of those symptomatic patients. So yeah, it will also reduce the wait time on 811 for sure. It is a throat swab, so certainly much easier than what we used to have a nasal swab. So yeah, it won't be that much hurtful procedure. Patient will just gag and it's normal. It's same like a strep throat testing, but here it will be more PPEs and other cleaning protocols involved. Once we do the test, at the end of the day, we bring it to the community lab, and community lab sends to Calgary provincial lab, and then if the result is negative, then we let the patient know. If the result is positive, then certainly we let the patient know, but they'll also hear from the Alberta Health, and Alberta Health will also contact the patient's family doctor too. If the patient doesn't have a family doctor, then Alberta Health has implemented the policy that they would assign a doctor to patient, so patient is being taken care of.
Testing at pharmacies will not be facilitated through 811. We all know individuals, businesses, or nonprofit organizations that have gone above and beyond to make the lives of others better during the COVID-19 crisis. Community heroes come from all backgrounds and perform all sorts of tasks to serve those within the Lethbridge area. MP Rachel Harder recognizes those heroes with a personalized certificate of appreciation. We spoke with one recipient on the pleasant surprise.
This was a good surprise. Yes, few community members told me that they put in my name for it, but I never knew that what we would get out of it. And then yesterday, when I went to check the mailbox, there was an envelope there, which was a hard file thing. And I was like, what is this? I was not expecting any courier or any mail. And then after I turned around and it was on the envelope itself, it said the name of our MP, and I was like, wow, this is something nice. So I went home, opened it up, and there was this certificate, which was a very, very proud moment. I would like to thank our Gujarati society, which gave me an opportunity to go out and help people in need, right? So in this COVID-19, people were only saying thank you to the frontline workers like doctors, nurses, and all that stuff. But there are a lot of other people in town. Like there is a whole lot of poverty line in town as well, which is our Lethbridge Soup Kitchen. They are the people, they don't know who they are serving every day. There is food bank, they don't know who is walking in their doors every day. There is Streets Alive, who they don't know who are walking inside. So they could have like people with COVID in there and they could get sick. But they all kept everything in line, and they still did their work. So it gave me and the society an opportunity to go towards that and saying that, you know what, thank you. It's not only doctors and nurses, yes, they are treating, they are the best people, but you know what, you guys are the one who are keeping our community alive.
If you are in agriculture and are looking for more information on technology and how important it is for the agriculture sector, Economic Development, Lethbridge, and Inbridge Inc. are putting on an event together called Emerging Tech Solutions for Businesses. The presentation will give farmers, producers, and service providers the chance to learn more about the role of the new emerging technologies and the part they play in the success of farming now and into the future.
The Emerging Tech Solutions for Business is an event we're doing specifically for the agricultural industry. And what we're looking at is inviting innovators and forward thinkers that are in the ag industry that would like to understand how emerging tech, such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, machine learning, can be incorporated into agricultural industry and apply to the businesses. The event is going to highlight what is emerging tech, define some of those blockchain, AI, exactly what does that mean, how do they work together, and then how are other agriculture businesses around the world applying this already, and how can we help our region become more globally competitive. So we're trying to bring innovators together to brainstorm about, once they understand what the emerging tech is, and that's the first part, will be a presentation about that, and then saying, okay, so what are our regional challenges that we have that might have emerging tech apply to them, and then let's start working on how we can make sure our region stays globally competitive, certainly in this changing environment.
The event will be held by Zoom on July 16th. Recapping one of our top news stories, opposition Conservatives are demanding that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau testify before the House of Commons Finance Committee as it prepares to study how much the government spent in awarding a now cancelled contract to the We charity. And a look at weekend weather. Tonight, partly cloudy with a chance of showers in the evening, a risk of an overnight thunderstorm, and a low of 9. Tomorrow, a mix of sun and cloud, a chance of afternoon showers with a risk of thunderstorm and a high of 20. Right now, people are trying to manage anxiety about a risk that has changed day by day since mid-March. It's natural to have trouble unpacking these layers of anxiety. BCN's Jeanette Roche spoke with a local pastor on how we can tame our fears. That interview is up next.
What lasting effects will the COVID-19 pandemic have on the church? Has fear overtaken some believers, causing them to stay away from churches even after restrictions have been lifted? Joining us today to talk about these timely issues is Rowan Crown, pastor of Amazing Grace Community Church here in Lethbridge. Rowan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, Jeanette.
Yeah,
really
and it's lovely to meet you too.
Yes.
My understanding is you've been here many times, but I haven't had the opportunity to meet you yet.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
That's great. So your church has not quite opened to the public yet, but I understand that you will be doing so soon, right?
Yeah, so this Sunday we're going to hopefully open up to the public. We've been doing pre-recorded services up until this time, and the main reason we haven't is because we didn't have the equipment to live stream, and so we wanted to have the option, if people weren't comfortable yet coming, that they could watch the service live, and people who could come in based upon the restrictions given to us by Alberta Health Services.
Right, so you were doing church online?
Yes, we were doing pre-recorded services. So it looked a little different, recording midweek and then producing something for Sunday morning.
I see, yeah. So what was the response from your members?
Yeah, I think overall it was a good response. Probably one of the good things that happened as a result of this was because of our connections in the community, people were actually checking us out online. And I was getting a fair few comments from people. Thank you for putting your services online. People who had never walked into our church before. My family's in Australia as well, so it was actually a joy for them to, they were watching my services over in Australia. So
That's wonderful.
That was good too. So I think there's been some positives come out of this, and I think the other positive is because we lacked the equipment to be able to live stream. someone made a very healthy donation to us in order to get the equipment to be able to do that. So, I think there's a blessing that's come out of this for sure.
Wonderful. I was wondering too, with more churches going online, if maybe it would attract people who normally wouldn't have the, enough bravery or whatever to walk into a church for the first time, right?
I think so. I think it gives a little bit of window into the church, right? And lets them check out a church before they actually go in. So I think that's a blessing that's a part of this.
Yeah. Do you think that it's an effective alternative to meeting in person?
Yeah, I think it is an effective alternative. Okay. I think the people who commented to me that they were looking at our services, they already knew me. Some people hadn't, so I think that's a good thing too. It just shows that because you have a relationship with someone, that then they can make that connection as well. So hopefully it leads towards maybe them going, hey, this is a place I could go and check out church, so to speak. So.
Right, exactly. Now, Pastor Rowan, during these times of uncertainty, many have gone through all kinds of roller coaster emotions, right? Some have lost loved ones, some people have had business fails, some people have lost their jobs. So what can we learn in these trying times?
Yeah, I think it's been a very, very difficult time. We've had people who have lost loved ones to COVID. In fact, right before COVID hit, my wife, her mom died of pancreatic cancer. Yeah. And during the midst of it, it just made it even more difficult, right? To know how to go alongside people, because they're not only dealing with grief, but they're also dealing with this thing that we've never dealt with before, right? So it put people in a very weird, not weird, a different situation. Sure. So talking to them and counseling them and encouraging them. On top of that, I'm also dealing with it, right?
Yes.
And I would say there were periods that I went through some anxious times in my own life.
Wow.
Right? Never experiencing that before.
Of course.
Right? And I think that has a lot to do with the changes in our world and how we adjusted during that time period.
Mm-hmm. That must have helped really shape your messages too, because we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think it was really hard to. For me, I'm very much a people person. So to not have people around when you're doing your messages, it made it more difficult. Yeah. It didn't make it as real at times. Sure. But I really prayed that, hey, when we recorded, let's make this look like church as much as we can, for my own sake, as well as the people listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as this pandemic continues with restrictions slowly being lifted, how has this time affected or challenged you as a pastor? I mean, we've been talking about that a little bit already.
Yeah, so personally, there were some challenges I faced, just in my own thought process and my own relationship with God, right? I think that was good. I think it helped me reflect on what is the very purpose of the church. See, we struggled with, we can't meet as a church. But is that the only definition of the church? It really made me examine what is the role of the church in the world, right? We can still be the church without having to meet together. Right. And I think that was one of the big things that really encouraged me, that I looked at scriptures like Acts chapter 16, Paul and Silas. It says they were in the inner stocks of the prison. Talk about quarantine, talking about isolated. Yeah, what did they do? They didn't moan and complain, we can't go to church. They worship God. Right there. They praise God and worship God. And as a result, their chains were lifted, and everyone in the prison, their chains was lifted. So their circumstances didn't stop them praising and worshiping God. And so I think this time for us as the church, we can complain, we can't meet together. It's not, the government's not treating us like restaurants or Home Depot or whatever. You heard those comments, but really, the church can still be the church, regardless of whether we gather at a building or not. And so we just found ways, or God really opened up ways in which we could still be the church without having to meet together. And that was really cool. And to see how that really impacted people's lives around us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everyone's going through this together, right? And we're all facing fears and anxieties and different challenges. So fear and trials in life seem to sometimes reveal who we really are as people, right? So is this a good thing, in your opinion?
I think so. You know, I think anytime that I was actually reading a passage in Isaiah just before I came, anytime God confronts us with challenges, there is a chance for us. We can throw our fist up at God and complain, right? Or we can, you know, healthily submit to God and say, okay, God, what do you want to do in my life during this time, right? And that was hard, right? Because we get used to the same patterns of relationships, of life, of things we do, and that was all upended. And so it's then up to us as believers to, you know, humble ourselves and seek the face of God in the midst of these challenges. Now, that sounds really easy, me saying that, but it wasn't really easy because I'm stubborn just like every other person in the world, right? So yeah, it was a learning time.
You're human. That's
Human.
what it is. You're
That's
human.
right.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on the long-term effects of the shutdown of the church? Will there be long-term effects, do you think?
I joke with people when we start meeting up, you know, publicly again. You know, who's going to show up? You know, we don't know, right? You know, because you also have people who are in different ideas of when they're going to meet and when they're not going to meet, right? You
That's
know,
true.
Right? So you've got to be sensitive.
So some people think it's too soon.
Some people
and
may think it's too soon.
Some people are like, oh,
Some
should have been
people-
done long ago.
Yeah. You know, so you got to be respectful for that, right? Because we're not just dealing with some thought or some idea that everyone has that same feeling about this. You got people who have range of feelings. So you got to be careful, right? You know, number one, you've got to respect. I really believe you've got to respect our government and what they've laid down. We've got to be a good witness to those around us. And number three, we've got to be careful that we don't make the minors the majors and the majors the minors, right? And that's in my own life too. So when we open up Sunday, if we have 5 people show up, right? You know, hey, we get to worship God with 5 people, right? That's okay, right? You know, and realizing that we can trust in God through this process.
Yeah, well, that's a really positive takeaway too. I was going to just ask you if you've seen any positive takeaways from this whole time of lockdown.
Yeah, I think there's been some positive takeaways. I really believe, Jeanette, that we live in a time that God is trying to engage his people. And the way we feel like, or the way we've done engagement with God, God's saying, listen, I want to wake you up, right? You know, the way you've been doing things, maybe you're not trusting in me enough. And so I think the positive thing for me is moving forward, how am I going to listen to God? How is our church going to listen to God in the process of this, and really go back to the basics, right? You know, worship and prayer and preaching the gospel and loving and serving one another, being a community, and allowing the Holy Spirit to work through us in the midst of that. It's a challenge, but I think it's encouraging.
Now, how can the church help those who might be overcome with fear? There's a lot of fear going on these days for both believers and non-believers alike.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think our job, and I've been studying the scriptures, and especially the life of Jesus, and Jesus was a listener. If you look at what he did and how he reached out to people, he met the woman at the well. He listened, right? You know, and I think we've got to learn to be better listeners of people. I've got to learn to be better. I think more with my mouth than anything, and I've got to learn to use those ears more effectively and listen to people's fears and let them take the time to reveal those things to me and pray with them, encourage them, journey with them through those fears. And that's what I've been praying as we move forward through this, that I do that better. So
Yeah. What do the scriptures say about fear? I know there's a lot in there.
The fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom, right? That's a healthy fear, right? Philippians talks about do not be anxious, right? But with prayer and supplications,
good one for these days.
right? Make your requests known to God, right? So I think there's a lot of ways in which we can respond to healthy fear, and I think the healthy fear is, okay, God's in control, God is sovereign, and we can trust in Him. I remember sitting at the beach in Florida when all this COVID happened, because that's where my in-laws lived, and I remember seeing the sun rising, because my kids and my nieces wanted to see the sunrise. And I remember taking a picture right at the beginning of COVID and posting on my Facebook. It's awesome to know that God's in control, right? Right there, God knows what we're going through. So that can help alleviate our fears. At the same time, opening up to people, reach out, right? Don't hide in a way that you're not willing to really get the help you need during this time. So there's lots of different ways, and get people praying for you.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any favorite verses that have helped you overcome these times of uncertainty?
Yeah, I think Philippians 4. Do not be anxious for anything. I think for me, I've been reading this book. It's called The Valley of Vision, and it's actually prayers written by the Puritans. And I've been reading that most mornings, and just having a solid prayer life. And even they use a lot of various scriptures to pray to God, and sometimes in our anxiety and our fear we don't know what to pray, and just to be able to sit and pray those prayers and take the time to listen to God, that has really helped me. Going to the Psalms is another way in which I can experience. I actually did a series through Psalm 119, the longest psalm in the Bible, where I just shared my thoughts about what God's communicating to us through that psalm. And that was helpful for me. And I kept on doing it. I don't know how many people were watching it, but it was really helpful to me to know that the covenant-keeping God is steadfast in His love and faithfulness to us as His people. So
Thank you so much for joining us here at the desk.
thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
Well, many people love the idea of having their own children someday and raising a family, but an unplanned pregnancy can potentially throw your world into a bit of a turmoil unless you get someone to come alongside to lend a helping hand. Today's guest is Monica Lowen, Executive Director of the Lethbridge Pregnancy Care Center. Welcome, Monica. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
All right. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your organization, what it's all about, what kinds of help you provide?
Absolutely. Lethbridge Pregnancy Care Center has been operating in downtown Lethbridge for 6.5 years, so since 2013. And we are there to provide assistance to women and men facing an unplanned pregnancy. Anyone facing an unplanned pregnancy, like you alluded to, that can cause a lot of turmoil. And it's a big decision to have to make. And so we're there to provide a listening ear, to provide encouragement, and to provide information on options available, and then support after the decision is made, whatever that decision is, whether that becomes practical supports or emotional support afterwards.
Right. So can you update us a bit on how your clinic is operating now that we have COVID-19 restrictions in place?
Absolutely. So for the last, 7 weeks now, our door has been locked. So we have just 2 paid staff in the office. Our volunteers are checking on their clients from home via text, via Zoom. We're still doing new client intakes over Zoom. The phone is starting to ring a lot more. Women are finding themselves unsure about a pregnancy and they're needing to talk. So we are being able to do that via Zoom and video conferencing. Women who need practical support, so diapers, formula, things like that, we're bagging that up and we're able to hang that on the door to ensure good social distancing there as well.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? We're all kind of doing it now, aren't we?
Absolutely.
All right, so I went through a crisis pregnancy myself, so I understand what it feels like, but maybe you can explain, what typically goes through the mind of someone who just found out that they might be pregnant? Is there panic and fear, obviously, fear of being left alone?
Absolutely, and I think actually the emotions would range as far as a spectrum, right? For everyone who finds themselves in that circumstance, it depends on their larger circumstances. For some women, they find themselves in that unplanned pregnancy and there's perhaps shock and surprise, but there's, okay, I can do this, I need a little bit of help. For others, there is absolute panic in that, what's going to happen? Are my parents going to kick me out? Is he going to leave me? How can I do this? So really the range is enormous. And that's the piece where we get to come in and meet her where she's at. Yeah. And just assure her that however she's feeling is normal and that's okay. And we're going to be here for her.
Right, or him, because you mentioned
Absolutely.
that you do
Absolutely.
counseling
Yeah.
for men as well. All right. So when an unplanned pregnancy occurs, there can be a stigma, obviously, that comes with that. So your clinic provides a non-judgmental approach. What does that look like exactly?
Absolutely. Many of the clients that we see often, they're judging themselves pretty harshly already, so they surely don't need anybody else. We're there to just answer their questions, and we're there as somebody who's not emotionally invested in her situation. Often when a woman finds herself unexpectedly pregnant, everyone else around her has the answers. So if she has spoken to people, there's people saying, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this, or else she's really scared to tell anyone, and she hasn't been able to speak about it. When we're not invested emotionally in her situation, we're not part of her day-to-day. So we're there to say, we're here for you. Whatever you choose, we're going to support you. We're not living her life. At the end of the day, we go home to our lives. She goes home to hers still pregnant. So we can't make that decision for her. We can't tell her what to do. And we surely can't judge her for what she chooses to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really important too, especially when you have individuals coming in looking for counseling, particularly maybe post-abortion counseling and support, which
Absolutely.
you do as well, right?
We absolutely do. We are finding the longer that we're open that we meet more and more people, right? Everybody responds very differently after an abortion experience. And what we do find that our clients talk about is there's not a lot of space to talk about that. While the topic of abortion is far-flung across our country, there's a lot of attention given to it, and everyone has a really strong opinion, there's not a lot of space given to women to speak about their emotions after an abortion, whether that's relief, whether that is pain, whether that's confusion, whatever that is, often a woman will keep that to herself. But that is something that needs to be talked about. And so we're happy to do that and journey alongside her as she wrestles through those emotions and how that's impacted her life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. Now, what age groups are you typically dealing with? Are the clients on the younger side, or do you get some more mature women coming in for help as well?
Unplanned pregnancy can happen to any woman who's able to conceive. So our youngest client has been 14, our oldest has been 43. Unplanned pregnancy really doesn't discriminate. So I would say our biggest demographic of clients would be between 19 and 24, the post-secondary age within there. But really, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I'm guessing that some of your clients decide to keep their child while others choose adoption. And is this something that you help with as well?
Absolutely. So when a woman comes in to talk about her pregnancy options, we'll give her information on all three of her options: parenting, placing for adoption, or terminating a pregnancy. And then whatever she chooses from there, we'll journey with her, whether that is the practical supports needed for parenting, connecting her with an adoption agency and walking that adoption journey with her, or being a safe place to land and to talk after an abortion decision.
That's huge. That is huge. Okay, so once the child is born, what kind of help is the mom usually in need of over the next number of months?
Again, it very much depends on circumstances. For some of our clients, it is very much a financial struggle. So then we're able to help out with baby clothes, with diapers, with formula. For others, they need emotional support. Perhaps they're doing well financially, but they're on their own. I've been a single mom, That is a hard, lonely journey. And so to have somebody to call and say, I'm so tired, or even have somebody to call and say his first tooth came through, that's a big deal. And so we get to be that support as well.
Mm-hmm. And I see you even provide teaching for new moms as to what to expect in baby's first year. That's really important.
We do, and what we've found, so that's a 6-week class that we offer a few times a year. One of the biggest benefits comes out of that is community. And so we see the moms who do the class together, sharing phone numbers. They get together for play dates. They have built now a community of other moms, which has been fantastic to see.
Mm-hmm. Now, are these being done on Zoom these days, which you alluded to earlier?
We haven't done one quite yet, but we're getting into that time frame that it'll be just about time again. So we'll look at doing it on Zoom.
That'd be awesome. So what kind of feedback are you getting from people who come for your help?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's another great thing about having been open as long as we have been now. We've had women come back. I think one of the greatest compliments we get is when our clients return the clothes that they've gotten from us, saying, you've helped us, we want to help you. We had a client actually just last week call and say that she wanted to make a financial gift. She said, I have some money that I want to gift to a charity, and you guys have played such an important role in my life, and I want to be able to gift this to the center. So it is amazing to have our clients refer their friends and their family to say, you have played a huge role in my life. I want you to also help my friends.
That is huge. So you probably get some individuals coming to your clinic to get some birth control items. Is this something that you deal with as well?
It's not actually. We are not a medical clinic at all. So for those looking for birth control, we'll refer them to go back and talk to their doctor or to a pharmacist. We do have some great conversations though, even around the topic of abstinence. Just to be able to say, hey, it is actually a healthy choice. If you're choosing to be sexually active, then you need to be talking to your doctor, but what would it look like in your life to make a choice for abstinence?
Mm-hmm. Now, I understand that your staff is mainly volunteers. Are you looking for any more volunteers at this time?
We're always looking for volunteers, actually. So yes, we have 4 paid staff currently and about 25 volunteers every week, and our volunteers are the ones who see our clients, who do those options counseling. We also have volunteers who work in our clothing room, sorting donations, all of those things. So yes, that's something we're always looking for.
So all across the gamut.
Yes. Yeah.
There's something for everyone.
Absolutely.
And are you still accepting donations of new or used items during this COVID-19 time? It's kind of hard to donate these days.
It really is. And actually we get a number of calls every day, and we are not accepting any new or used clothing right now, but what we are accepting and we are asking for is donations of diapers, formula, wipes, things that are brand new and boxed up that we can wipe down and safely hand to our clients.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Now, I believe that your facility is mostly funded by donations as a charitable organization. So how can people support you financially?
We are supported by our donor base, and we have a fantastic donor base here in Southern Alberta. I think we all know how philanthropic and how generous Lethbridge and Southern Alberta is, so we're so pleased to be a part of this community. But yes, COVID-19 has definitely messed with our fundraising this spring. We've had a couple of events that have been canceled, so any financial support that we can receive is very much appreciated. We are looking into some of the subsidies and things that are made available through the federal government, but we are getting ready to kick off an online fundraising campaign on Mother's Day. What we typically do is we have a baby bottle campaign where we hand out empty baby bottles to church congregations and they fill them with change. Well, we can't do that this year. So that is going to be entirely online. And so we're hoping that families are able to take part in that and that they'll be able to contribute financially, as well as just learn about the center and hopefully learn what we do, but also how then to respond in grace to someone who is experiencing an unplanned pregnancy, and just to have those conversations as families then.
Mm-hmm. So online financial donations, you're still accepting that through your website?
Absolutely, through our website. Okay. Go to lethbridgepregcenter.com.
Well, Monica, thank you so much for being here again. We just really appreciated you stopping by again.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be able to come back and give you an update and just to be able to share with your viewers what's going on in the center in the midst of COVID.
In many nations around the world, the persecution of Christians is happening on a daily basis. Open Doors Canada says each year 260 million Christians are persecuted for their faith in Jesus, and that number is going up. Now, what can we as believers in Canada do to help support our brothers and sisters? Prayer is probably a good start. Joining me now to talk about it further is Gary Stagg, Executive Director of Open Doors Canada, joining me from Mississauga, Ontario. Gary, welcome back to BCN.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now, for those who may not know, what exactly is Open Doors Canada all about? What does your organization do?
Our organization supports persecuted Christians all around the world. It started 65 years ago with a guy by the name of Brother Andrew, who felt called of God to smuggle Bibles behind the Iron Curtain. Wow. And of course, since then, with the rise of Christian persecution, the ministry has expanded so that we work in over 60 countries around the world. We strengthen and equip Christians in the most dangerous places where to live as a Christian. And we provide discipleship, safe houses, trauma counseling, job training. We train leaders. We provide basic needs. We basically do whatever the persecuted church is asking us to do. So they're the ones that know what they need. And so we're here to respond to their needs. And we do that the best that we can.
Why does Open Doors produce the World Watch List each and every year? How is the list put together?
The World Watch List is put together by a lot of research that's happening basically around the clock. We have people that are in the field, people that work behind a desk, and their job is to put together the statistics to monitor what's happening all around the world when it comes to Christian persecution. And so it's known as the best resource of its kind, and a lot of governments and different political organizations, you name it, they look at it for direction in what's happening with Christians and in general religious persecution around the world.
Now, apparently, in some of these countries where Christians are persecuted, women are doubly persecuted for their faith and their gender. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, in many cases, unfortunately, women are considered to be almost second-class citizens in some of these cultures. And because of that, not only are they persecuted for their faith, but they are doubly persecuted because of their gender. And there's a whole study that's been done on this and a lot of research that's gone into it. And Open Doors just produced a paper on gendered persecution and the implications of that around the world for women. So, yeah, you think of the persecution on one level, but when it comes to women, there's a double whammy. They are persecuted doubly.
Now, before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, Gary, you traveled to Malaysia and Egypt. What was the purpose of going to those countries?
The purpose of going was just to see the work that's happening, to encourage persecuted believers in those countries, just to see all of the work that we're doing there as an organization. And so it was a real joy for me to go and to meet with some wonderful people there, some brothers and sisters who really, when you get together with them, it's quite a humbling experience.
Now, a recent report is talking about the kidnapping of Christian girls in Egypt, and it continues unabated. Gary, a U.S.-based advocacy organization, Coptic Solidarity, is calling on the Egyptian government to step in and take a stand against these kidnappings. What happens to these girls once they're taken?
We don't have all of the details about what's happening to them, but this is a problem that happens not only in Egypt, but as you know, in Nigeria. You know, the Chibok girls that were taken, forced to marry Muslim men, older Muslim men, is often the case that the thing that happens to them, and the other thing that often happens is the forced conversion. So they're forced to convert to Islam as a part of their abduction. So a pretty terrible time for these young girls, and a lot of them are very young. Some of them are 12, 13, 14 years old, and many of them are still missing all around the world. It's not just in Egypt, but in many other countries as well.
How do the governments not look at these men as being pedophiles? Young children.
I know, but for whatever reason, it's a societal acceptance. They accept it for whatever reason.
Their cultural norms, I guess, right?
Yeah, and they just turn a blind eye to it. It's cultural norms.
Wow. And I bet a lot of these young girls get new identities as well, probably new names when they're forced to marry these older
Yeah,
men.
for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, things, Gary, are also apparently getting tougher for Christians in India. The northern Indian state of Haryana may become the 9th state to adopt legislation forcing conversion to Hinduism. What will that mean for many believers there?
Well, this is happening all over India, and we're hearing reports of atrocities that are happening. What's happened in India is that the government, the present government that was elected in 2014, has a mandate, and they want to turn India back to a Hindu country by the end of 2021. So that's not that far away. Right. And so they're very sympathetic to all of the people the Hindu extremists. And so a lot of extreme things are happening to Christians, forced conversions again. If they don't comply, their churches are burned down. There's some horrible things that are happening to them. And basically, the government is saying to be Indian is to be Hindu. And so, again, they turn a blind eye to the extremism that's happening. The other thing that we're seeing in India right now, of course, is with COVID-19 and with the aid that's being distributed in many of these places, and where you mentioned, indeed, in North India, these are often rural places, and so the aid is given to the elders of the community to distribute. And so the elders of the community automatically know who the Christians are, and they force the Christians to wait at the back of the line, knowing that they're not going to get any food anyway. And so they send them to the back of the line, and they usually go without anything.
Are they doing this something similar to those who are Muslim, not just the Christians?
In India, yes. They're doing a similar thing to Muslim people in India.
Gary, how have you seen COVID-19 impact our persecuted brothers and sisters living in countries like China, North Korea, and Syria?
In many of the countries, COVID-19, I mean, persecution was bad before, but for our brothers and sisters who are being persecuted, COVID-19 has just added another whole layer to that. And many of these countries already have, very volatile health systems, economic systems, and so they're just not getting the help that they need. Again, in many places, because they're Christians, they're relegated to the end of the line. Or to the back of the line, and they're not able to get the medicine, the food, and all of the things that they need. And so in some places, they're just desperate. In India, I know that there are people who are starving.
So what initiatives is Open Doors taking to support persecuted Christians impacted by COVID-19, especially even in the northern camps in the Iraqi city of Mosul? I mean, the virus can spread quite quickly through the camps where so many have been displaced.
Well, that's the other thing, because they live in such close quarters. And, we can social distance, and it's easy for us. I mean, I live in my house. I'm here. My wife is in her office upstairs, and we can do the social distancing thing. It's not a problem. But for these people, many times there's multiple families living under one roof. And so that becomes a problem. We've had to switch, to be honest, some of our programming, some of our priorities. Where we were moving away from a lot of the aid stuff that we were doing in places like Syria, going to focus now in the next couple of years on more discipleship and training and so on. We've had to switch back and start to help with the feeding again.
Now, can you explain, Gary, what kind of impact these programs are really having on persecuted believers and their families?
Well, I think in many cases they're just keeping them alive, to be honest. And of course, the overarching thing is that they become very aware that they're not alone, and that's so important for them to understand that there are people in the West who are remembering them, who have not forgotten them, who are holding them up in prayer, and so that's a big thing. But right now, it's just a matter of survival as well. So the things that we're doing are just trying to help them stay alive right now.
What are some of the things that most people do not realize about the persecuted church?
Oftentimes when people think of persecution, they automatically think of violence. and they think it's always violent, but it's not. I mean, there is the violence, obviously. We just talked about the girls being kidnapped and so on, and churches burned and pastors killed, and there are all of those things. But for the majority of people, it's just the marginalization every day of the things that they go through. Um, they're just, like I say, put to the end of the line. They are given the worst jobs in society. They're held back. Their kids can't get decent education because they're Christians. And so there are all of these things that are just constantly squeezing them into that place where the persecutors want them to be. And so it's not always violence, but it's the daily pressure, the daily squeeze that they feel.
Gary, as Canadians, what can we do to really help our brothers and sisters in Christ who are suffering in these countries? I mean, prayer is probably a good start, right?
Yeah, you said prayer at the beginning, and I was so happy to hear that, because if you ask them, that's what they ask for. If you ask them, what can we do for you? They always say prayer, even though it's obvious they need so much other stuff. But they would say, pray for them, and I would say, don't forget about them, and support them. Give them the prayer support they need, but also donate to organizations that are helping our brothers and sisters around the world who are going through persecution.
Now, you offer opportunities for people to join Open Doors for missions trips. Tell me more about that.
We go on trips of encouragement. Those have been suspended for this year, obviously, but we go on trips where we just go to encourage them. We call it our International Presence Ministry. So we don't go and make ourselves obvious and preach on street corners, or even build buildings and stuff like that. We don't do anything that will draw attention, but we go there to meet secretly with these believers and encourage them.
Last time you and I chatted as well, Gary, you mentioned countries like Pakistan, North Korea, and China, where persecution is really bad for Christians right now. Are those still some of the countries on your watch list?
Oh yeah, for sure. The Pakistan would be in the top 10. All of those that you mentioned are really high up on the list.
So where can viewers go to learn more about Open Doors and to donate?
They can go to opendoorsca.org, and they can sign up for our newsletter, for our prayer calendars. They can make donations there. And also I would mention that they can sign up for a Zoom prayer meeting. The first Tuesday of every month, we have just started a Zoom prayer meeting where we come together as believers in Canada to pray for the persecuted church. So we would invite anybody that wants to join us to go to our website at opendoorsca.org and sign up for that. And just inform yourself about what's happening, and then as the Lord would lead, just respond to what you're learning.
So Gary, what kind of rewards do you get out of being involved with Open Doors Canada?
For me, it's the reward of being with persecuted believers. I think it's just such the humbling experience of being with them. We often think of ourselves, I was a pastor for many years, and you think of yourself as having a certain level of spirituality. But when you're with a persecuted believer and, they're asking you to pray for them, and you see the incredible faith that they have, so often I want to say, can you please pray for me? I think I'm the one that needs the prayer.
Wow.
And so that's, I think, the gift. It just kind of puts things in perspective for me, and helps me to realize that I don't really have it all that bad here in Canada.
Amen
as a
to
Christian.
that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Gary Stagg, Executive Director of Open Doors Canada, thanks for joining me today from Mississauga, Ontario.
You're very welcome. Thank you anytime.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.